Hello, gardening friends. Today is Thursday, the 13th of April. It is a rather breezy but cool day today. I just got Miss Mimi to go outside. It's about 1:30. It was raining this morning. Where is Miss Mimi? She's sheltering away from the breezes. I've been doing a lot of potting, and I figured I would take a quick walk around and show you what I've been potting up. Here are some very pitiful looking dill seedlings, but they might make it. I did notice in the angel's trumpet, that's the cutting that I took from last year, that there are some datura seedlings coming up there. So I'm going to let them grow and I'll transplant them somewhere else. I'm sure they probably won't come up the beautiful double purple that they were, but I'll take what I can get. Here you can see a new picture on my nepenthes. And it just has a whole bunch of new growth at the top. I planted all my colocasia, or elephant ears, in pots. You may recall I had it planted in the ground, and I had found a little piece like that last year that had come over from my neighbor under the fence, and I planted that in the ground, and unbeknownst to me, it spreads. It sent out runners, I'd say about 6 to 8 foot long, and about every 1.5 to 2 feet there would be a node, at which point roots came out and a plant appeared and new bulbs started growing. So I went ahead and figured this is not something I want to put in my yard. Instead I would relegate it to pots, and that way I can keep it under control. This other pitcher plant is doing fabulously well in the sun. It seems to be doing so well I'm not going to bother repotting it this year. There are some signs of growth on this plant, but that's not come out yet. Plumeria. That's about what a plumeria looks like all winter long. I was fortunate this year I had a few leaves that lasted on it. I did go ahead and trim the boxwood hedge around my rose garden. It looks a lot better now that it's been neatened up. And I planted one of the lavenders in this pot, in this trough. I didn't have the heart to get rid of the gaillardias that were there. The one in the middle was doing pitifully, so I dug it up and stuck it to the right, and I put the lavender in the middle. I have had just 3 lavender plants there in past, and it looks pretty as long as 3 lavender plants live, but invariably one of them usually dies midway through summer, and then you're left with a gap in the plant. So I figured instead of setting myself up for a fail, I would just go ahead and plant one of them and keep the gaillardias there. I do notice there's some new growth on these cyparis. It's my first year with them. Well, second year. I bought them last year. I wintered them over. I did protect them from the bad freezes. I put them inside my garage. And here you can see how much rain we got. This was last night only. About 4 inches of rain in one night. We didn't have any storms. It was just a steady rain. Fortunately, I had spread some fertilizer out in the pots that I had just repotted. These pelargoniums are from last year, and I don't plan on repotting them or putting anything new in their place. They've done so well, and I've brought them in for the winters, that I'm just going to leave them in the pots as they are. I fertilized them. I did go ahead and finally plant out everything that needed planting out that I had taken cuttings of this last winter. Here you can see another pot of the elephant ears. This is where I did have the Lenten rose for 5 years, and it did absolutely nothing. Didn't die, but I went ahead and planted that now in my Lenten rose garden. And in its place, I tried the colocasia. I'm hoping that putting them in a pot, they will conform to the size of the pot and not get huge. Here you can see where I planted the second cutting I took of the white angel's trumpet, and that's the old angel's trumpet next to it. It doesn't look like it lived through the winter, so fortunately I took the cuttings. Oh, the new arrival came. I had ordered from eBay some Spanish moss, and I've draped it all over this palm, because the palm itself, I'm sure there are palm lovers out there that are saying, what did you do? But in a small garden, there's a lot of trunk here to see, so I went ahead and draped the Spanish moss on the trunk. There is Spanish moss growing in my neighborhood, and so I thought maybe if I sent for some that was live harvested, it would grow for me here. I do notice one of the problems I have with it, the birds have been tugging at it, and there's a chunk of it on the ground. The birds also like it to make nests with. You can see I've got the little fountains going. The other news that happened yesterday, which was pleasant, you won't remember it, but it was a big deal for me. And that is in this corner where this big telephone pole is. Next to it was another wooden telephone pole that went about to the middle section of that one where you see the crossbar. And there was nothing on it but one wire. And I've been trying for 20 years to get that pole removed. Finally, with the construction of the street, somehow, miraculously, they were able to remove it. So I'm very thankful for that. When I bought this property years ago, I was blessed with 4 telephone poles next to my little snippet of street, and now I'm stuck. Yeah, I now have only 2. That one and then the support structure here. This one, let me get a better shot of it. This one has creeping fig growing up it. And so far the city has let it grow. I left it there because it's better than looking at a telephone pole. The frost, of course, nipped it back, but you can see there are green patches of it. I had that stuff in my oak trees. I planted creeping fig in the oak trees, and it did save me a little. It took over the 3 oak trees I had here, and the good thing about it, probably a bad thing and a good thing, it weighed the oak tree down and broke branches. But the good thing about it was, because of the vinage, the branches fell slowly and compactly to the ground. It kind of just placed them very carefully so they didn't do a lot of damage when they fell. But I would not recommend planting creeping fig to anyone within hearing distance of my voice, because in a zone 8B garden, it will take over in a skinny minute. When I planted it at first at the bottom of my oak trees, for 3 years it just sort of stood there and grew a foot or 2, and about in the 4th year it shot up the tree, never to be stopped again. Here you can see my bougainvillea is starting to bloom. Interestingly enough, these blooms I never really noticed before start out small and gradually get bigger and bigger as the leaves are getting bigger and bigger. Here's some more of the potting that I did. I finally have a purpose for this trough. I bought this, it's a hypertufa trough. Bought it many years ago. Fancy word for basically a styrofoam cement mixture. So it is light. And I wound up putting sedums in it, or sedums if you're English, sedum if you're American. Same thing as garage and garage. But they're all stone crops. This one in the middle is a spectabilis. It's going to get tall. And I don't remember what the yellow one is. I should, because I just bought it. And the other one, I believe, is dragon's blood. It will get a little bit taller than where it is now. The smallest is going to be this. And I had a hen and chick left, so I just stuck the house leek in the corner. I did finally wind up taking out my Japanese orchids, the ground orchids. They didn't bloom this year. I don't know why. They've bloomed every other year, but not this year. So maybe next year. Bring them out in the sun and let them get some nourishment. I did plant the rest of my caladium bulbs in that pot. I had a pot of caladium bulbs. If you go back through the videos, you'll see. I like to get Kathleen because they're fragrant when they bloom. And I like to have them in a pot near where I sit. And in any event, that pot held hyacinths and other things, so I had to remove the caladium. I guess technically they're corms and not bulbs. And I just put them in an open plastic bag and stuck them in the garage. And sure enough, they started sprouting, so hopefully they'll be growing soon. Here's where I had the Lenten rose that was in the pot that now has the colocasia in it. This Lenten rose is still blooming. It's going to be probably for a couple more months yet. When they start blooming, they really stay at it. I did go ahead and put out my hummingbird feeder. I was sitting, oh, the wasps are already here. They're happy. I was sitting out reading on the back deck yesterday, and a hummingbird buzzed me and basically looked me straight in the face. It almost looked like he was gonna hit me in the head, but in any event, I just looked at him and he looked at me, and I guess that was a hint to go ahead and put some food out. I had this food out all last year, and the only time I ever saw the hummingbird was when it was empty. He would do that, buzz around my head. Other than that, wasps ate from it all the time. Here's the other Lenten rose is starting to bloom. So spring, I think, is, although it's starting up in the rest of the U.S., I think for me, spring is about over. And we're starting to get into the summertime plants, although today it is a particularly cool day. Here's a snapdragon that I planted in, I think, October of 22. No, I was right the first time. 21. It's 2 years old. This one is likewise just as old. Sometimes plants become like old friends. You just, especially if they're still producing, I just can't bear to do them in. I do see here that my daylilies have started, and I'll leave you with a picture of my 20 daylily. They've become a little more apricot down south. They seem to be more orange in the cool of the north. But these are the ones that grow wild along the hedgerows in New England. And every part of the plant is edible. And that's about it for today. I hope you all can get out and enjoy the beautiful weather while it lasts. Have a good day.